October is Breast Cancer, Mental Health, and National Disability Domestic Violence Awareness Month. This recording is for Wednesday, October 16th, 2024. And we have with us today someone you've known very well with us for a long, long time. That is Keisha Jackson. She's an Air Force veteran and a family caregiver advocate. We want to talk about is pre-planning for tough decisions. Sometimes these things we need to talk about because we have tough decisions to make when we're caring for people that we love. And actually giving that attention to detail that they deserve. How you doing, Keisha?
I am doing well, Sean. How are you doing?
Doing pretty good. So what do you have to tell us about those tough decisions? How do you pre-plan to make those tough decisions?
Well,
what are the tough decisions we have to make, first of all?
Before I get into talking about the tough decisions, with October being Disability Awareness Month, I just wanted to acknowledge all of those family and professional caregivers that are out there. Some of them are providing care 24 hours a day. You know, the last time I was on the podcast, I had someone on that was sharing resources and talking about different things to help family members with special needs. So I just want to just to celebrate them, although they're definitely not looking to be celebrated, but to acknowledge them during this Disability Awareness Month. And with that, I wanted to say it's so interesting how we're talking. Well, I'm talking about Disability Awareness Month right now, and something came in my feed the other day about a person that is supposed to be an advocate for people with disability. How she takes them out shopping, and she was taking them to a store, and she wind up having them steal for her. They were stealing. She had a bag. And they were stealing, she had them stealing clothes and shoes and sneakers and other miscellaneous things. And she was sentenced. So, on one hand, we're mentioning this Disability Awareness Month and celebrating those. But then we have those that are actually supposed to be helping and providing. And to find something so disturbing like that, it just really, breaks your heart.
So what types of things can people do to prepare for those events when you get older? Or you might be disabled, and you have to then think about how do you pay the bills every day. And then on top of that, you need medical attention.
Yeah, some of the things that it's always going to be pre-planning. The emphasis is talking to people about pre-planning, not to wait until you get to that particular time. Is to try to sit down, have those conversations with your family. If you can have those conversations with your family, maybe talking to an elder care attorney. Learning about resources that are out there, talking to other people maybe on your job, find out if your job has FMLA. All of these different things are things that you can do to be able to help you prepare for those very difficult decisions that you have to make.
I think long-term care planning is something that's very important, I think, for a lot of people. It was something that people don't think about. There's a lot of creative ways now that people have, that financial services have and things like that can help people plan for long-term care. It's not as expensive as people might think it might be, although if you don't have the right things in place, I think it can be very, very expensive and sometimes even bankrupt you, because as we know with Medicaid, to get into a Medicaid facility, do you want to go to a Medicaid facility? Is that going to be good enough for you? Or do you want to go into the facility that you actually want to go into, where it's clean, the people are attentive, the nurses are actually skilled, and the doctors are taking care of you in a proper way? What are some of the things that you would tell people as to how to begin to make those plans?
One of the first things I would tell people to do is talk to your loved one, whether your loved one is in a position of needing care at that particular time, or it's just a young couple or a parent and their child, to be able to have those conversations very early on, even before it's time. Sometimes I've told people to help bridge the start of that conversation is maybe turn on a movie that has some of the similar topic that you want to talk about caring for someone, or maybe something about death, to be able to bridge those conversations from the very beginning, to be able to talk about them, to be able to talk about the finances, about pens, about what are your medical needs, who are your doctor, be able to jot all of those things down. The most pre-planning that you can do is the more it's going to help you later on when the time is come and is needed.
I like that idea of like using that as an icebreaker. If you want to talk about something, maybe, hey, let's go watch this movie, whatever. And I heard this was a great movie. It's got a great actor in it or something like that. And then talk about the things in the movie that pertain to your life, because if you can watch something that's really important, maybe you have a family member that's going through Alzheimer's or has the early onset stages of Alzheimer's. I actually had a conversation with a young lady not too long ago, and she's going through this with her sister, because her sister is starting to have really advanced stages of Alzheimer's. And it's not only that, but it was exacerbated by lifestyle choices, things like that, alcoholism, things along those lines. Now, the thing is that they're having a difficulty talking about that, bringing that subject up, because the person that needs to care oftentimes doesn't want to talk about it. So when people start to put up those defense, that shield, and start to kind of try to change the subject, or maybe they don't want to talk about it altogether, how do you overcome that?
Sometimes you let it just kind of rest for that particular time, like, okay, maybe you make a little inroad by asking a question today and you get a little bit of answer. Or a lot of times I've shared with people to not make it between you and the individual that you're talking about, but come up with a fictitious person or somebody at my job, but you're really talking about your situation, so they're thinking that they're talking about someone else and not themselves. I find that to be really, really helpful. But sometimes you just really have to step in and take over and say, put those things in place, because it could be, the person could be at a place where there's no option to say, well, it's going to be what you want, because the care that could be needed could be way past what you can provide for that particular person.
What are some of the things on your mind when you think about care? I know you had a family member that you took care of, and why don't you talk about that a little bit to kind of remind people what you went through with your mother, but also what are some of the things that people need to be thinking about? Because sometimes it blindsides a lot of family members. They might have, mom might be great, or someone coming back from service seem to be great, but then they start to decline, and then all of a sudden it's just like a bus hits you, because now they're in a state where they really do need care, but you weren't even anticipating it. You may not have been paying attention to it.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying. The more you can pre-plan, if you can, the best. But sometimes you don't have that opportunity. Whether it's Alzheimer's, a person can have a heart attack. I had a friend that was diagnosed with cancer, and then in a matter of almost weeks or days, the person was no longer with us. And so sometimes you're forced to be right there in the very moment making those decisions. So you just either have to, again, try to prepare as best as you can. But if not, just you have to go right in and be aggressive and saying, look, these are some things that I have to do. I cannot do this by myself. I need to know this. I need to know that. I need, and just try to be a little bit more forceful, because there's no other way that you have but to get it done. And sometimes that's not just with the individual. Sometimes that could be with the medical staff. And that's why, again, I'll keep going back to preparation is so important, because depending on your relationship, you may not be able to just walk into a hospital. You may not be able to walk into a nursing home and say, I'm this person, tell me, because there could be something that person has already put in place. So again, I just cannot stress the importance of trying to prepare as much as possible. But when you can't, just use your wisdom, talking to the doctors and different things as well, to try to make the best decisions that you can for that individual at that particular time.
If you don't mind, tell me a little bit more about how you cared for your mother and how you broached this subject with your mom.
Yeah. So when my mother was diagnosed with stage 4 inoperable lung cancer, I had no idea that she was even sick. And one of my brothers called me, and I wound up getting in the car and driving to Philly, where she was at, and going into the hospital. And when I walked into the room and the doctor came into the room, that's when I found out that she had stage 4 inoperable lung cancer. So that was my immediate onset. I didn't have time. I hadn't talked to my mom about preparing for anything. And so I asked the doctor, what could we expect at this stage? And he said, the only thing that you could expect is life support. Now, because of my faith and my belief in God, I talked to my mom about a couple different things. I said, I know what the doctor is saying, but what are you believing? We're going to believe God for whatever you're believing. And so that was a part of a journey that we went on with my mom. But my mother did not want to come to where I live. She wanted to stay in Philly. But when I would go to her house, I saw how she could not take care of herself. And my mother was very, very big on cleaning, making sure her house was immaculate. She was very big on cooking. There was like cans all over the place. And so I told her that she had gotten to a place where she could not live by herself. She did not want to. So when my mother, I said, so I had to kind of trick her. I said, how about coming to stay with me for a weekend? And she came down, and I was so grateful. I hate to say it, but I was so grateful that she left her pain medicine back home. And because she left her pain medicine, I wound up having to take her to the emergency to get her pain medicine and different things like that. So it was through that process where that was the beginning of me able to transition her to where I live, and to be able to take care of her until she went into in resident hospice.
Wow. I think it's really important that every family needs to understand. I have to share a little bit of my knowledge, but the thing of it is that families need to have in place immediately, particularly seniors. You need to have power of attorney. If you're married, you need to have power of attorney of your spouse. So if something happens, either one of you can step in and take care of their other person's affairs.
Yeah.
Part two is you need to also have a power of attorney, a contingent power of attorney, which is someone younger than you. Because if you have a husband and wife and they're both in their 80s, it's going to be hard for one to take care of the other.
Yeah.
So you need someone who's 20, 30 years younger than you, younger than the older person, the person that might need care, so that they can really have the energy and hopefully the time and the resources to go in there and help you with those little things. But like you said, access is critical, because if you're not the person who's the power of attorney, you cannot access the information. You can't talk to the doctors. You can't talk to the Comcast when they want to close your cable bill or whatever, or turn off your cable. You can't talk to the mortgage company when they want to foreclose because the payment hasn't been made. Only person that can do that is a power of attorney or legal guardian. Mm-hmm. So I think that's really, really important. People need to understand. And then there's two different things. There's power of attorney for property, and there's power of attorney for medical. Okay, mm-hmm. And I'm not an attorney, so I'm not giving legal advice, mm-hmm. but it's important that people need to research these things, understand what they are, because it's pretty much self-evident that these are things that people need. You can almost argue that every person needs this in their life in case something happens. You might get hit by a bus tomorrow.
Yeah. And something that goes with that, it's not always the caregiver. Sometimes it's the person. It could be the family member. It could be the spouse. It could be the child saying, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about death. I don't want to talk about, and that makes it hard as well, because sometimes the person is trying to put those things in place, but the family member or the friend or the neighbor, whoever, doesn't want to talk about it. So that can make it difficult as well.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And even for people to really just kind of, it's hard, like you said, it's a tough conversation to have, but you have to be honest with yourself. I think at some point you have to realize that, and be humble and say, hey, I might need help one day. And so a lot of this falls on the individual, just realizing that you need to start researching and getting the information as to what you need to do when something happens. And I think in a future show we need to do is actually do a full-blown, show on what are the steps that you actually need to take legally, financially, things along those lines. We have a lot of people that we can access here at America's Heroes Group that can actually talk about those things. But one of the critical parts of it is that, people, as you mentioned, people need to be prepared, but you have to start doing the work ahead of time. When it rains, it's too late to get an umbrella. Mm-hmm. If you're caught out in the rain and you're out, way out, someplace in the wilderness or whatever, and it's raining, it's too late to go grab a raincoat because you're in the rain already. Your car's getting wet, you're getting wet. So you have to plan and think ahead. What is the weather going to be like? Just like like I said, if you have to get to that point where you have to be just be able to let go and say, well, what if something happens to me? Who is going to take care of me? Who's my team around me that's going to support me? Having those conversations with your family members. And even parents, oftentimes, what I've seen is they assume that the kids will, as you mentioned, sometimes the kid doesn't want to talk about it or the child doesn't want to talk about it. Sometimes the parents just assume that the kids will be there. And then not understanding or realizing that the child or their son or daughter may not be prepared or willing to be that person, that go-to person. They may not be emotionally prepared. They may not be financially prepared. They may not have the time to do it.
Yeah. And all of those goes in the reason why, we keep going back to saying to try to have these conversations very early on, because it has been known that a person that is caring for a loved one, out-of-pocket expenses are enormous. because a lot of times, because they haven't done the preparing, or maybe through the local area agency on aging, or some of the other local places that through the local resources that they could learn about that may be able to help them, they don't do that because they're doing everything out of their own pocket. And then right now it's like, oh, okay, well, I'll go and buy maybe some cough syrup, and I'll go do this and I'll get supplement this, or I'll buy them this to eat. And then those bills, they continually come in. Then you're missing work, or you may have to take off work, or you may not be able to have the FMLA, or it may not be long enough that you need. And now you're like, wait a minute, you find that you're being financially spiraling out of control. And it's difficult for you as well, whether you're wealthy or not. It doesn't matter. It definitely happens.
Yeah, it's definitely something, but but once again, there are resources and tools out there that people can access. We can't go into those things now because there's a whole bunch of YouTube and regulatory things that we can't talk about without the proper disclosures and things along those lines. But the thing is that those things are out there, and there's resources and tools available to people that can help them with those resources, whether it be through having the right Medicare or understanding how Medicaid works, the difference between Medicare and Medicaid. If you go into a facility with this Medicaid, you got to have less than $2,000 in assets. And they also look back, typically in most states, some states even more, but 5 years, they look back minimum. Most in every state, pretty much the minimum is 5 years to go back and see how you handled your assets. So if you're a wealthy, and then some states, like in our state, where you're in Virginia, I came from Maryland, they can even put the onus on the children sometimes. If the person goes into a nursing home and they don't have the money to pay for it, but the kids have assets.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that people don't know about that law that is out there, that they could legally they can come after you to cover those costs. And so you didn't realize that because you may have been not involved with it, and now you may be getting some notice saying, hey, you owe us this amount of money for your loved one that was in this assisted living facility or nursing home or different places like that. So, but with that, it's so important, not just the preparing from that particular place, but this is something that I'm always stressing as well. Get involved with your loved one, whether it's at the hospital, whether it's in hospice, whether it's in a rehabilitation place, whether it's in a nursing home, wherever it is. The more you can get involved, to know what's going on, to be there, to show your presence, it's the best thing to do to help your family member, but also to help you as well.
And I think also as people that are taking care of veterans that are coming back, that a lot of veterans aren't that old and need caregiving. You have a lot of veterans out there that are injured or have different types of disabilities that need caregiving. And so for those families, you got to start getting involved with the VA early. And veterans, you got to also take the ownership yourself and start looking into what programs does the VA have, so that way you can start to access those things, or at least get the ball rolling before you actually need them. Find out what's available, go out there and start getting your paperwork, connect with organizations like the DAV, Disabled American Veterans. Make those phone calls so you have at least educate yourself, and then so if something does start to happen, your family members are kind of prepared to a certain extent to start getting you into the programs that exist, so you can get the care that you need and be able to pay for those things if you have to.
Yeah, I know some of the people and spouses in the military, they are briefed into a lot of different things in terms of, being a family caregiver, in terms of provider, of holding down while maybe the spouse is deployed or different things like that. But then sometimes you have whoever that particular individual is that has been deployed or may have been wounded or different things like that. Like I was saying about like my mom and different other people, they don't want to talk about it. And so even if an individual doesn't want to talk about it, like you said, it doesn't stop a person from going into websites like the VA and beginning to learn. Nobody has to know that you're doing that. There's
Right.
800 numbers or 888 numbers that you can call to get in particular information, and even say that maybe I'm calling on behalf of trying to get information because of my husband or my wife or my son or my daughter. They were in, here or wherever, and they don't want to talk about it. Is there anything that I can find out, or what are some of the things that I could do now to help put in place for my loved one and maybe myself or our dependents or different things like that?
So once again, we're talking a lot about the problem and bringing awareness to the situation. I think we owe it to the audience to do a follow up to this and do a part two where we talk about the solutions and things and strategies that you can actually put in place to actually that you can help put yourself in a better situation. So when the unexpected does happen, you're a lot more prepared versus being bum rushed by by a problem and not having any kind of resources or tools around you. The
Yeah.
first part of the we were talking about is at least getting educated and having the conversations. So if you start having the conversations, that at least starts to get your mind thinking about what types of things should I be thinking about. What if my mother loses her home or my father loses their home? What would happen in that situation? What if they get into a situation where they're disabled and they can't work or they because a lot of seniors, as we have to admit, a lot of seniors are still working in their
Mhm.
60s and 70s today. You
Yeah.
don't hear a lot of the politicians talking about that today, but you have a lot of seniors that are working past Social Security age. And
Yeah.
if
And
they were to lose that job because they got hurt or they were sick or something along those lines, that could be a financial catastrophe for that family, for that senior.
yeah, there's a lot of need. There's a lot of need even in the workplace, to be able to have the different conversations like that. And sometimes you have coworkers that don't want to share, don't want to talk about maybe they have a loved one that they're going home and that they're taking care of, or financially it's a burden for them until it gets to the point where it's absolutely too late, and now their finances are impacted and now they're torn with they have to work extra hours to try to see if they can get overtime. But at the same time, maybe that loved one is so in a place where now they have to spend more time or taking off work. So now you're struggling and, what do you do? What do you do to help your family? There's a lot of sandwich individuals. There are parents that are taking care of their children, and then their parents that are taking care of their parents, and so they're trying to figure this all out. I got to take my son or my daughter to maybe basketball or dance recital or whatever, but then I got to take my mom or my dad to get their dialysis. And so you're going through all of these different things. And then it always comes back to the other part. You really don't have a lot of time for yourself. But then you look at your finances and you say, well, what am I supposed to do?
Hmm. Now you alluded to faith a couple of times. Did you seek the church or seek any kind of aid or comfort through people that might be at your church or maybe in a community that are faith driven?
Oh, most definitely. So definitely a person strong in faith. And I had different people coming to my house. When I was caring for my mother, it was a different time than it is now. I really believe that I would not do what I did back then. I wound up having people to be able to come in and sit with my mother for a few hours. I found them like maybe some of them was through word of mouth. Some of them was when my church family couldn't come, and maybe 2 or 3 hours, and I would pay them. My mother, because it goes back to the thing, I had to work because I had to help financially take care of my mother. And so I was kind of torn. I was stuck where people were coming in that weren't always church members, sitting with my mom, but thank God nothing was stolen. Although I have had friends that have talked about people coming into their homes and there was stuff that was taken for them. But yeah, my faith was definitely a big part of it. My church was a very big part of it. And as a matter of fact, through a lot of the prayers and again, where I'm at spiritually, through praying and fasting, I did a lot of different things, and God revealed a lot of different things to help me with my mom, in terms of with wisdom, and talking to her, in terms of medications, in terms of natural things that I was able to give her, to the point where when she was in hospice, the doctor kept saying, "What are you doing?" And my mother would always joke and say, "Don't let them know, what we were going, what was going on."
Why didn't you want them to know?
Because she knew that they were giving her the morphine. They were giving her the different things. But I would get off work and I would be on the phone. I mean, I'm sorry, I would go on the internet and do research for like 8 hours straight of what could I use to substitute this. And so I was finding all of these different things. I was giving her like chamomile oil, and I don't want to say it to make it seem like I'm suggesting to others to do the same thing, right? Because it's a trial and error. And it could be very scary because my brother actually thought I was trying to kill my mother because I wasn't giving her some of the medications or some of the research or the different things that I had found. But she didn't want them to know that she was taking those things. She just wanted them to think that she was on this regimen that they had set out for her.
Okay. So now, when your mother started to go into decline and she was in the hospice, Emotionally, how did that strike you, and how did you maintain the strength to keep going?
100% it was my faith. And because it's I actually wrote it in a book and had wrote a screenplay about it. A lot of different things happened, but again, it goes back to where I'm at spiritually and my faith in God and different things that He showed me and that He revealed to me that were so profound. Things that happened with my mother. So I got my strength, first of all, through my faith, through others that were there that were helping me. But again, just where I was at with God, He was there was dreams that I had that they came true. And so it was like my steps were being ordered through the whole process.
Okay. We're about to wrap up, but don't drop off the stream yet, because I want to get your information, your email, things like that, so we can communicate the plan for the next show. Because I want to go over some of the solutions and strategies that people can put in place to kind of put you in a better spot. And this for not just for veterans, but for anybody, because this is information that people really need to know. And I think like I said, we did a good job of identifying the problem and getting people to start thinking about it, which is the first step. But then what are some of the things that they can do about it to really try to tackle it? It's not going to necessarily solve everything as a silver bullet and be a quick solution, but at least you can start taking the steps to put yourself in a much better place. So you don't have to go through the hardship of not being prepared.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree with that.
So thanks for your time. Thanks, Keisha, for your time. So like I said, don't drop off yet. This America's Heroes Group will be right back. So stay tuned. And also don't forget to like and subscribe. You can see us on americashg.org. That's americashg.org. And make sure you like and subscribe with us, but also leave comments, because those comments let us know what you want to hear and what you want us to talk about. And if you have something you want to share on America's Heroes Group, feel free to reach out to us. Info at America's HG. That's info at americashg.com. But make sure you can communicate with us and get us the information that we need to serve you and help you. We'll be right back.